12. Spiritual and mystical experiences. Mystical or spiritual phenomena present people with a glimpse of the other side of the real world. They can occur through meditation, prayer, nature, near-death experiences, or in many other ways. Occasionally they occur during sleep, in dreams, and in that period of time just before falling asleep or awakening, before consciousness is reached. Those habits and patterns that bring us to such transcendent moments may work well for one person but not as well for another. It is important to find the path that works for you. The use of drugs, whether hallucinogenic ones or other types, can provide a superficial encounter with these high levels, but there will not be a complete understanding of its nature. For this reason, among others, I do not recommend using drugs to bring about these states. The glimpses that such otherworldly experiences provide us are extremely valuable, for they offer insight into the true nature of mind and of being. Such insights show the permanence of existence beyond the body, beyond the brain. They allow us to reach enlightenment. They show the beauty and the wisdom of the process or the Tao, or the flow which is always there, which is always right. This process is guided, perhaps, by a divine presence, often reaching down to us through an act of grace to nudge us back to our destiny and to help us with the lessons that we came here to learn. The stories in this chapter present a wide variety of such experiences, from the earthly to the distinctly unearthly, yet all the roads lead back to the same place, a life-transforming recognition of our soul's essence. Some features of the mystical or spiritual event are a feeling of oneness with all that is, of an energy that connects everything. There is a sense of timelessness, of infinite patience. With the understanding of such an occurrence comes an increase in one's ability to reach out and help others without expecting anything back in return, and to approach each person and each situation with grace, kindness, and tolerance. There is peace. There is joy and happiness. Frequently, there are also increased intuitive abilities and a knowledge of things that are unknowable by use of the five senses, which may include psychic and healing abilities. This is true for all great spiritual traditions. The most significant characteristic, however, is love. It is an unconditional love, rather than one that is romantic or specific. One realizes that this kind of love is everlasting, eternal, and not subject to the laws of human nature or of the earth. It can never be lost, it is a universal constant. To illustrate this, imagine a mother's love for her baby, or a person's love for a dear pet. The baby or the pet does not need to perform in order to win love and acceptance. It is there no matter what the child or the animal does. It is deeper than that. It is profound. It has no conditions. It knows no limits. And neither do we. Indra's net. One night during the professional training that I attended at the crossing in Austin, Texas, I had a dream unlike anything I have had before or since. In it, I was one of millions of octagonal disc-shaped objects, which traveled at light speed to and from Earth's surface to an outer universe above it. As we left Earth with information about this planet, we would approach a vortex-type opening, shaped like a funnel, and we would begin a swirling, circular pattern as we entered it. Once we passed through the long tube into the universe, we would straighten out and, upon coming out at the other end, would intersect and join with others in what appeared to be a blanket made up of millions of us. We then discharged our information and swirled back down to Earth through the vortex, going the other way and retrieving more information. This pattern repeated over and over. I woke from this dream in the process of doing a very specific hand motion, which at the end of the dream was being given to me as a means of communication with the blanket or net above Earth. There was one motion that tied my visual and emotional content to the net, and one motion to disconnect. I have used these hand motions ever since to connect with this net and disconnect from it, with the purpose of providing the net with the human experience. It was clear to me that the net held and does hold all of the knowledge of the universe, and that what I am to provide it is the emotional component. As an example, if I am having a thought that I find disconcerting, I will connect an example. If I am having a thought that I find disconcerting, I will connect and let the net feel that emotion. Then I disconnect. At first I only connected on good things, but I soon recognized that the net was non-judgmental and not an assessor of good or bad thought. Thus, I began and still do communicate anything that I find to be unusual, good, or bad about the human condition. Now, I must add that I work with the severely mentally ill, particularly the schizophrenic population, and I would likely say that someone was psychotic or delusional for engaging in such things as I am describing. However, the dream happened, the information was received, and, right or wrong, I feel obligated to do as it revealed I should. Trust me, I'm sitting here shaking my head as I write this. The morning after I had the dream, I awakened and relayed it to my wife. Let me interject at this point how the whole ordeal was feeling. Have you ever jumped off of a cliff or high dived into water far below? The first time I ever did, I felt exhilaration coupled with complete helplessness upon having left the board. This is how the events of the week with Dr. Weiss felt at that point. I had been on a perfectly sound diving board and had bounced up and down a few times. However, upon finally leaving the board, there was no turning back. Emotions were running the gamut from complete and utter wonder to panic, and everything in between. That day, I was in search of some coffee on a break and went around to the back side of the building, where I stumbled across Brian and Carol as they too were taking a break. Carol kindly said that they were interested in my experience and asked me to relate it to them. I did so, briefly, as I felt that surely they heard this stuff all the time and that what I considered life-altering for me was probably common news to them. However, they took honest interest, and Brian mentioned having heard of something in India's history about a net above the world. This, of course, turned out to be Indra's net, and the descriptions that I have read about it on the internet are quite similar to my experience. Brian also remarked that the communication process with the net was a gift given to me. I had not thought of it that way, I saw it more as an obligation. Now I realize that the two are not mutually exclusive, and that an obligation can indeed be a gift. The seminar gave me immediate empathy for Brian and the emotions that he must have felt while keeping the regression information quiet in the early years. Like him, I did not tell many people about any of my experiences, particularly of the net, until now, of course. Interestingly, those I have told about it have often responded with an awareness of something beyond the about it have often responded with an awareness of something beyond the limits of Western organized religion, and I have been grateful for their position. I wish to say that the seminar and this experience rocked my safe little boat, and I know now that it needed to be rocked, for which I am beyond grateful. I have a long way to go, but at least I have no fear of the path anymore. Raymond Wilson. As Raymond progresses rapidly on his spiritual path, he is simultaneously sharing the details of his experiences and thus helping many others on their own paths. On that day in Texas, when Carol and I were taking a break on the back porch, Raymond came looking for some coffee. He then proceeded to accurately describe the image and concept of Indra's net, about which he had never heard or read anything. In his earnest manner, a portion of his mind thinking that he must be weird, he described a 2,500-year-old concept about the holographic interpenetration and the interconnectedness of all things and all beings. Although Raymond is an incredibly down-to-earth person, what he relayed was as far from earth as possible. He had no idea that these ancient Hindu and Buddhist concepts and images were being validated by the findings of modern particle physics. The weird part was Raymond's ability to tap into the ancient images so clearly, just as he had been able to see and draw the millennia-old Shaivat symbol of Nikhil's regression to his princely coronation. The truly weird part was probably the shocked look on my face as I realized what he was so accurately describing. At the conclusion of that Texas training, I had dictated some of my recollections. I found a snippet about one of Raymond's regressions, a cosmic conscious memory. I remembered that he had been part of a quilt consciousness, overlooking the earth of the distant past or future. He was not alone in this quilt. He knew he was with other spiritual beings, and that they were all somehow interconnected. Raymond was neutral about this planet's capabilities for nurturing the growth of souls. Earth was black and icy, yet when he was sent down to determine the texture and nature of its covering, he discovered that it was not solid ice but something softer, more flexible. And knowing that it did have the potential to sustain spiritual life, he and the entire consciousness were happy. He then, basically, went through the life cycle of evolution. First, he was a kind of one-celled being. As he became a tiny organism in the ocean, like a sea snail but smaller, he grew very excited. This organism extended its flagella, or protuberance, above the water level. This was an extremely important evolutionary step, which thrilled him in the overlying consciousness. It's not clear if this experience was the beginnings of evolution on Earth, or if it was in the distant future as a regeneration of this planet was occurring. Raymond sent in his own account of the experience, clarifying my initial impressions. As the regression began, I began flipping through eons of time and through great quantities of lives. This moved at a lightning-fast pace. It was most similar to the films that used to be shown in high school, with frames that flashed by as the end of the film strip went click, click, click at rapid speed. The other comparison would be to a television back in the day, one on which you could adjust the vertical control and the screen would roll quickly with a bar in between each scene. This is how my regression occurred. In my mind, I knew that each frame was a life and that I was going backward. The film slowed and came to a stop in a primordial ocean with darkness and kelp-like vegetation that was rooted deep into the seafloor. I was a single cell-type creature with a single hair-like appendage, and I was on the stalk of one of these kelp. I could note light above and was working my way toward it. Upon reaching the surface of the water, I raised my flagella into the air, and in that moment I knew quite distinctly that what I had just done was new and very important for the future. I did not know specifically of what importance, however, it seemed to be tied to evolution, and there was a clear feeling of new life and development. I felt safe and quite independent, and I was unaware of any other life forms around me. Upon the end of the regression, I had no question that I had been in the oceanic soup before human life. I still do not know how to interpret this, but I knew that it was important at the time, and I hold it so now. Our bodies may be constrained by this physical dimension, but our minds and souls are not. In both his dream and his regression, Raymond allowed himself to venture beyond and above the earth, doing so literally afforded him a universal perspective onto existence. The same was true for Marcia, the client featured in the following story. To heal her human life, she needed to uncover its decidedly non-human origins. Us soulmate. This is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.